Loneliness can break a man long before life ever does. It creeps in when the world quiets down, when the phone stops buzzing, when the lights go out and all that's left is you and your thoughts. But being alone, that's something else entirely. Solitude has raised warriors, written masterpieces, and shaped legends. Not because it's easy, but because it demands something most people run from, facing themselves. Here's the truth. Loneliness isn't caused by the absence of people. It's caused by the absence of connection. Not out there, in here. You can be surrounded by friends, laughter, attention, and still feel completely empty. And yet some walk this earth with no one at their side, calm, clear, unshaken, because they built a life on something deeper than noise. Research from top psychologists shows that people who embrace solitude actually have greater emotional strength, stronger decision-making, and more creative clarity than those who never spend time alone. But you won't hear that on social media. No, you'll be told you need more. More followers, more friends, more constant contact. But the ones who grow, the ones who rise, they go within. Loneliness isn't a punishment, it's a signal. And solitude, it's a tool. If you understand the difference, you unlock power. If you don't, you'll spend your life chasing people, places, and pleasures, never knowing peace. In this video, we'll break down the subtle but life-altering line between being alone and feeling lonely. We'll expose the truth behind the noise, and we'll show you how to transform solitude into strength. This is not just self-help. This is survival. Welcome to Unstoppable Ascent. Subscribe now, and let's rise together. Silence can feel brutal at first, like a door slamming shut on the outside world. No voices, no noise, just you. It almost feels like punishment, something to escape. But what if that silence isn't a cage but a key? Solitude has been misunderstood. We've been taught to fear it, to see it as a signal that something is wrong, that we've failed socially, that we're unloved, or worse, unlovable. But solitude isn't what breaks you. It's what shows you where you're already broken. And that's exactly where its power lies. In solitude, the masks fall, the noise fades. You start to hear thoughts that were drowned out by distraction. Some are uncomfortable, some are ugly, some are true, but all of them are yours. And once you face them, you begin to own them. Great thinkers, artists, and leaders have all turned to solitude, not because they were rejected by the world, but because they needed distance from it, to think clearly, to feel fully, to remember who they were when no one was watching. Studies show that people who regularly spend time alone tend to have better emotional regulation and stronger self-awareness. They process life more deeply. They make decisions with clarity instead of pressure. Because when you're alone, there's no one to impress, no one to compete with, no one to perform for. There's only you and the raw material of your life. That kind of space, when chosen, not forced, becomes sacred. It stops being something to survive and starts becoming something to seek. Solitude doesn't shrink you, it sharpens you. But only if you stop seeing it as exile and start seeing it as the beginning. Most people think they're lonely because no one calls, no one texts, no one shows up. But the real reason? They haven't called themselves in years. They wake up and reach for their phones before they reach for their thoughts. They go through their day listening to everyone else's voice, but never stop to hear their own. They avoid the silence because the silence exposes something they don't want to face, themselves. Disconnection from self is the most silent epidemic we face. You can't post your way out of it. You can't party your way through it. You can't even pray it away if you're not honest with who's praying. See, loneliness doesn't always come from a lack of people. Sometimes it comes from a lack of presence, your own presence. You've abandoned yourself, and now you're waiting for someone else to fill a space you were never supposed to leave. When's the last time you sat with your own mind and didn't try to escape it? Not judged it, not distracted it, just listened. There's a voice in you that knows who you are, who you were before they told you what to be. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's constant. And if you ignore it long enough, the world will give you its noise instead and call it love. But it's not love. Love starts at the source, and the source is you. When you reconnect with yourself truly, something shifts. You stop begging for scraps of attention. You stop molding yourself just to belong. You stop looking outward for validation and start building inward with truth. Because nothing feels more like home than finally coming back to yourself. We don't fear being alone. We fear what we hear when everything else goes quiet. That's why we run, from one app to another, from podcast to playlist, from scrolling to shopping to noise, noise, noise. Because silence, that's where the truth lives. And truth doesn't care about your comfort. The constant need to stay distracted isn't a sign of boredom. It's a sign of avoidance. Avoiding what's inside. Avoiding the parts of yourself that don't fit into filters or captions. The parts you buried so deep you hoped even you would forget. But they're still there. And they're loud when everything else isn't. Distraction is a drug, and the world is your dealer. Every beep, every buzz, every mindless scroll is another hit. Keeps you numb, keeps you busy, keeps you from asking the real questions. Who am I? Why do I feel empty when no one's watching? What's left of me when the performance ends? The truth. We've trained our minds to fear stillness, conditioned ourselves to believe that quiet equals failure, that boredom is a flaw, that solitude means something's wrong. But real peace, real confidence, it's forged in the fire of undistracted moments. That's where clarity is born. That's where the false self starts to fall away. You can't know yourself if you're always drowning in noise. You can't build inner strength if your attention is always rented out to the next distraction. Turn it off, all of it. Sit in the silence you've been running from. And when the panic rises, don't run, stay, watch it, feel it. That's the door. That's the test. That's the work. Because once you stop needing the noise, you finally start hearing your life. Boredom. That creeping, heavy feeling. The itch in your mind when there's nothing to do and nowhere to be. Most people treat boredom like a failure, like something's gone wrong. They reach for a screen, a snack, a call, anything to avoid sitting in that stillness. But what if boredom isn't a problem? What if it's a message? Boredom is not the absence of stimulation. It's the absence of connection. Not with the world, not with others, with yourself. See, when you're truly connected to who you are, when your inner life is rich, solitude becomes a canvas, a space to think, to imagine, to build, to be. But when that connection is gone, solitude feels like a void, and boredom fills it like smoke in a silent room. But smoke is just a signal, a sign that something deeper is happening. If you're bored when you're alone, ask yourself, what part of me have I ignored? What dream have I buried? What voice have I silenced? Because boredom is often your spirit asking for purpose. It's your mind pushing you to explore, to create, to reflect, not to escape the moment, but to enter it. The people who fear boredom the most are the ones who haven't gone deep. They've lived wide, but not deep. They've consumed everything, but built nothing. Real peace comes when you stop treating boredom like the enemy and start listening to what it's pointing to. It's not telling you to scroll. It's not telling you to run. It's telling you to dig. Because under that boredom buried beneath the surface is a version of you that's been waiting, quietly, for you to stop being entertained and start being alive. Most people speak to themselves in ways they'd never speak to a friend. Cruel, sharp, unforgiving. You make one mistake, and the voice inside turns cold. You fail once, and it screams like you failed forever. That voice, your voice, becomes your first enemy. And here's the problem. You can't escape it. You can leave a toxic relationship. You can quit a bad job, but you can't outrun your own mind. So you have to change the way it speaks. You have to build a new inner dialogue. One that isn't soft but solid. Not passive but patient. Not fake but fair. Think about how you speak to a friend who's hurting. You don't tell them they're weak. You don't tell them they're worthless. You don't say, you always mess everything up. You tell them, it's okay. You're learning. You've been through worse. Keep going. Now imagine if you said that to yourself. Not once, but every day. That's not ego. That's healing. That's alignment. And it changes everything. Studies in neuroscience show that the way we talk to ourselves literally shapes the brain's emotional pathways. That means self-talk isn't just noise, it's wiring. Every harsh word cuts a deeper groove. Every kind word builds a stronger bridge. And the most dangerous part? Most of us don't even realize what we're saying to ourselves. It becomes background noise, a silent storm, until one day you start believing that voice more than you believe the truth. So you have to train it, like you would a muscle. Every time it snaps, slow it down. Every time it lies, confront it. Every time it doubts, remind it, you're still here. You've survived what tried to break you. That voice inside, it's not your enemy. Not if you teach it how to speak like someone who actually loves you. Solitude without structure becomes chaos. That's when the mind wanders. That's when the past creeps in. That's when the noise you tried to escape finds its way back in through the cracks. But solitude with intention, that's power. And the key is ritual. You don't need to move to the mountains. You don't need to disappear. What you need is rhythm, a way to meet yourself every day without distraction, without apology. It starts small. One simple act you do alone, not because you have to, but because it connects you back to yourself. A walk at sunrise, a journal before sleep, sitting with your coffee in silence, no phone, no headlines, just breath. The world has trained you to consume every free moment, but ritual teaches you to own it. You wake up and choose presence. You carve out time not to do more, but to feel deeper. And when you keep showing up to those quiet moments day after day, they start to anchor you. No matter how loud life gets, you know where the stillness is, and you know how to return to it. These rituals aren't about productivity. They're about protection. Protecting your mind, your spirit, your connection to who you are when no one's watching. Because when solitude becomes a ritual, you stop waiting for peace. You start building it. And that's when being alone stops feeling empty and starts feeling like home. Some of the world's greatest ideas were born in silence. No applause, no audience, just one person, and a mind left undisturbed. That's the thing about solitude. It doesn't just reveal you, it unlocks you. When you're finally alone, with no need to perform, something ancient stirs in the back of your mind. A quiet spark, a whisper. That's your imagination, rising from the place it's been buried beneath deadlines, opinions, and noise. See, creativity doesn't bloom in chaos. It needs stillness, it needs space, and most of all, it needs you to stop running from yourself. In solitude, problems become puzzles instead of threats. Ideas become maps instead of noise. You begin to think differently, not reactively, but originally. Because when you're not busy trying to match someone else's vision, you start to see your own. Psychologists call it default mode thinking. It's what your brain does when it's not being bombarded. That space where your thoughts drift freely. That's where insight is born. Not from effort, from allowing. But the world doesn't reward silence. It rewards speed. It tells you to stay plugged in, stay busy, stay watching. That's how creativity dies, by never being given the space to breathe. Solitude is that breath, and you don't need to be an artist to feel it. Creativity isn't just about making, it's about solving, about building, about imagining a future that doesn't yet exist, and having the courage to start shaping it. But that vision can't reach you if you never go quiet enough to hear it. So when you're alone, really alone, listen. The ideas will come, the answers will rise, the path will clear. All it needs is space and silence. And you? Most people move so fast, they miss their own lives. They wake up chasing the next hour, the next task, the next escape, and in the rush, they forget to see. But when you slow down, when you strip the noise, the pressure, the pull, you begin to notice what was always there. The way the light hits the floor just before sunset. The sound of your own footsteps in the morning. The way a cup of coffee feels in your hand when you're not scrolling through a screen. That's not boredom. That's life revealing itself. See, solitude sharpens your senses. It teaches you how to observe without reacting, to watch without wanting. And when you do that long enough, something changes. The ordinary starts to glow. Because truth lives in the details. Peace hides in the overlooked. And when you're present, really present, you realize how much beauty is hidden in the smallest corners. The world didn't get louder. You just forgot how to listen. The wind through a cracked window. The rhythm of your own breath. The pattern of your thoughts as they rise and fall. Most of us miss it. We're too busy waiting for the next big moment. The breakthrough. The reward. The applause. But solitude teaches you this. Life doesn't hand out meaning. You give it. With attention. With intention. When you learn to observe, you learn to value. And when you value, you start to feel grounded, not because life changed, but because you did. Presence is a skill. It's a kind of quiet strength. And once you build it, the small things stop feeling small. They start feeling sacred. Because the life you thought was empty was just waiting for you to notice it. Most people don't feel their emotions. They escape them. They numb them. They push them down so deep they can't hear them anymore. And then they wonder why they break suddenly, violently, over something small. It's not the moment that broke them, it's the weight they never unpacked. Solitude is the room where that unpacking begins. When you're alone, there's no distraction left to hide behind, no one to impress, no one to perform for. That's when the truth starts to rise. Old pain, buried shame, regrets you swore you forgot. All of it starts knocking. That's the moment most people run. But if you don't run, if you stay, you'll see something most never do. Your feelings aren't here to destroy you. They're here to teach you, to cleanse you, to move through you. Pain doesn't become power just because you ignore it. It becomes power when you process it. When you name it, when you sit with it long enough to understand where it came from, what it's pointing to, what it's still trying to heal. Solitude gives you that space, that silence, that room to feel without judgment. And the more you do it, the more emotionally free you become. You stop reacting out of old wounds. You stop blaming others for what you haven't faced in yourself. You stop carrying the weight of yesterday into today. And slowly, you begin to breathe again. Fully, deeply, without flinching. Because what you don't feel, you can't release. And what you don't face, you'll keep reliving. Solitude doesn't just show you the emotion. It teaches you how to walk through it and come out whole. If you don't guard your time, someone else will spend it for you. That's the truth. People will ask, people will expect, they'll pull, they'll drain. Not always out of malice, sometimes just out of habit, because they've learned that you don't say no. But solitude, real solitude, requires a gate. And you are the gatekeeper. Setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out. It's about keeping your soul intact. You can't pour into others if you've got nothing left in the tank. You can't listen clearly if the noise never stops. You can't show up fully if you're always halfway gone. You have to learn how to draw the line with grace, with strength, and with zero apology. That means saying no to plans when your body is tired, saying no to calls that only bring drama, saying no to the constant reach of people who love your presence but ignore your peace. Because every time you say yes to someone else, you're saying no to your own quiet, your own clarity, your own growth. Boundaries are not selfish. They're sacred. They mark the space where healing happens, where reflection lives, where your mind can stretch out and breathe without being interrupted by everyone else's urgency. And yes, some people won't like it. Let them not like it. You're not here to be constantly available. You're here to be whole. And sometimes wholeness requires distance, stillness, silence. That time you protect for yourself. It's not wasted. It's not empty. It's where the deeper work gets done. The kind of work no one else sees, but everyone feels. Because when you protect your space, you start to show up different. Grounded, clear, unshakable. You spend so much of your life waiting to be chosen, waiting for the text, the invite, the approval, the love. And when it doesn't come, you question your worth. You ask yourself, what's wrong with me? But the truth is, you've been asking the wrong question. The real question is, when will you choose yourself? Because fulfillment doesn't come when someone else validates you. It begins the moment you decide you're enough, without the spotlight, without the applause, without needing to be rescued from your own silence. Most people are addicted to being needed. They think connection means completion. But what they've really done is outsourced their identity, given someone else the keys to their peace, their confidence, their center. And that center can't hold if it was built in someone else's hands. Solitude strips all that away. It makes you face the mirror with no makeup, no mask, no audience. And that's when the real work begins. You start to see who you are without the noise. You confront the parts of you you've hidden. You learn how to be your own source. Not because you don't need people, but because you stop depending on them to feel alive. Choosing yourself means listening to your own voice, even when it goes against the crowd. It means honoring your own needs, even when others don't understand. It means recognizing that love is not something you chase, it's something you embody. And you can't embody it if you've abandoned yourself trying to belong. You're not here to be half of anything. You're here to be whole. And wholeness begins the moment you stop waiting to be chosen and choose yourself instead. Being happy alone isn't a fallback plan. It's not something you settle for when nothing else works out. It's the foundation, the ground beneath everything real, everything lasting. Because when you find peace in your own presence, when you can sit in silence and still feel full, there's nothing anyone can take from you. No relationship, no title, no approval defines your worth anymore. You stop chasing and start choosing. You walk into rooms whole, not hoping to be completed. You love without clinging. You speak without needing to be heard. Because you know that happiness wasn't hiding in someone else. It was waiting in the quiet, right where you left it. And if this spoke to you, if something in your spirit feels a little more steady, a little more seen, then take a second to like this video. Subscribe to our channel, we've got more coming. Real conversations, honest truths, no fluff, just what you need to come home to yourself. We'll see you in the next one.